Hi, my name's Mark Jansen. I'm the owner and managing director of Oldtimer Australia. Our business focuses on sports racing and classic cars, predominantly from the 50s, 60s and 70s, or anything just that little bit different. I've been asked to tell you, my story and how I got into classic cars. So I've been a classic car guy forever, and I can remember buying my first car magazine with some pocket money when I was 10 years old. It was a Modern Motor magazine from 1977. It had a Lamborghini Countach on the cover out the front of the Sydney Opera House, and it was a vision that I guess stuck with me forever. And I just remember saying to myself as a kid, I'm going to own that car one day, and as it happened I managed to achieve that goal. But look, been interested in cars forever, and over my journey I've been fortunate to own a number of nice cars. My background is out of the corporate world and in the engineering services sector. And in about 2010, I left an organisation I'd worked for just over 20 years. It was an amazing experience and an amazing journey. But look, I just needed a change, and I took a role with another organisation which I guess was on the comeback post-GFC, and unfortunately it didn't pan out as we all hoped. But I left there after a year and really wanted to do something different. I was looking for a sea change, and I happened to think about restoring a couple of cars, or finishing the restoration on a couple of cars that I had my eye on, and thought I could do that, sell them and turn a small profit. So that's what I wanted to do, and I had a couple of discussions with Terry Healy, who owned Oldtimer Australia at the time, and said to Terry, look, this is what I'm thinking. If I do that, can you sell those cars for me when I'm finished? One of them would have taken probably 2 or 3 months to finish, and maybe the other one 6 months. And we had a number of chats, and Terry rang me soon after and said, look, come and have lunch with me, I've got something to put to you. And he said, look, if you're looking for a career change and love cars, well, why don't you buy my business? He was looking to go and spend some time in America, and ultimately that's what's happened. So in sort of mid-2011, we talked about it. In October 2011, I was the one in the driver's seat, so to speak, and owned a car business of all things. And hard to believe 5 years on, I'm still involved, and look, loving every minute of it. It's, I guess, living the dream, as some people say, and the opportunity to turn a hobby that I love so dearly into a hobby business. I've met some wonderful people all over the world through cars, and look, continue to do so now in the context of a business. So in terms of the cars that we play around with at Oldtimer Australia, I guess our sweet spot are, typically sports cars from the 50s, 60s, 70s, but more and more we're getting involved in, slightly more modern cars, and cars from the 80s and even 90s, simply because there's been a significant shift over the last 2 to 3 years in the types of people buying cars like this 1992 Lamborghini Diablo that I'm standing next to. It almost happened overnight, where someone flipped a switch, and collectors are now becoming quite attracted to these sorts of cars. And I guess this car, being a 92 model, is now 25 years old. So that's what's happening in the market. So come and have a look. So there we go, the trademark scissor doors, which Lamborghini first introduced on the iconic Countach, which continue through to the Diablo, and then of course the Murcielago going forward. This particular car, as I said before, a 1992 model Diablo. In the day, its performance figures were quite astonishing, with a claimed top speed of 325 kilometres an hour, which is over 200 miles an hour, 0 to 100 kilometres an hour, or 60 miles an hour in about 4 seconds, powered by a 5.7 litre V12 engine, putting out about 360 kilowatts, which is about 485 or 490 horsepower in the old language. So an incredible car for the day. I guess most people that know me would be aware I have a real passion for classic Lamborghini, Ferrari, Maserati and the like. But I also have a real passion for microcars, and I guess taking the extreme of this fabulous Lamborghini Diablo through to this little car standing behind me, which is a 1959 FMR Messerschmitt KR200 Cabriolet. Quite a mouthful for a little car. The Lamborghini, as I've said before, was powered by a thundering V12 5.7 litre engine. Our little Messerschmitt behind me is powered by a 191cc single-cylinder two-stroke engine. I won't quote you a 0 to 100 km/h time because it probably doesn't go that fast. But fabulous little car nevertheless, a great driving experience. And the Messerschmitt story is a real interesting one. Most people would know a Messerschmitt as an aeroplane from World War II. Well, that is in fact true. And the company who built those aeroplanes indeed built these little cars. So what happened was Messerschmitt was basically banned from building aeroplanes post World War II. They needed to do something else, and one of the things they decided to build were these little, what they call cabin scooters, and they were extremely successful back in the day. I feel like I could be in the cockpit of a Messerschmitt ME262 actually. This little car doesn't have a steering wheel as such. The gear change is very much like a motorcycle where you'll 4-speed, as I said before, but changing gear 1, 2, 3, 4. Other than that, the pedal controls for clutch, brake and accelerator are much the same as a normal car. Very, very light, and they will keep up with modern traffic. Here are a couple of the other fabulous cars we currently have available at Oldtimer Australia. On my right is this 1964 Ferrari 330 GT. This particular example is an Australian delivered factory right-hand drive car, and by the unique double headlights you see here, it's identifiable as, I guess, a Series 1 car. The heart of any Ferrari is what's under the bonnet, and this 330 GT is powered by a 4-litre V12 that put out around about 300 horsepower in the old language, which is about 230 kilowatts in the new money, which is pretty impressive performance for 1964. Enzo Ferrari was famously quoted as saying, with his cars you pay for the heart and soul of what's under the hood, which is obviously the engine, and the body and everything else is a bonus. Well, let's hear it. Is a 1968 Jaguar E-Type Series 1.5 4.2 litre roadster. Arguably the most iconic sports car ever built, and today an E-Type often sits atop the lists such as the most beautiful sports car or the best sports car ever built. In fact, Enzo Ferrari once described the Jaguar E-Type as the most beautiful sports car ever built, and I think you'll agree that indeed it is a stunning car. This particular example has a really unique history. It was collected from the Jaguar factory in late 1968 by its Australian owner. He used the car around England for a very short time. In fact, a week after delivery it had a 1,000-mile service down in Bournemouth in the south of England, and 2 weeks later it had a 4,000-mile service up at Aberdeen in the north. So its new owner obviously got some enjoyment out of it, seeing the sights of England. The car was then sent to Papua New Guinea, of all places, where it stayed for a few years before coming to Australia, and we found a home in Adelaide. I guess I get asked the question very regularly, what's my favourite sort of car, and it's a bit like being asked to choose between your children. However, I guess I do have a real burning passion for Lamborghini. I've always loved the Lamborghini stories, and this particular car on my left is a 1977 Lamborghini Urraco P300. It is a car I've owned for about 16 years as it stands, and is one of my favourites. I think a really underrated car. They built just over 200 of them with the 3-litre engine, hence the designation P300. A very rare car around the world obviously, and certainly in Australia. Fabulous balanced car to drive, and as a junior supercar is quite an easy car to drive and live with, and still remains one of my favourite cars today. And from the Lamborghini perspective, I guess it's a car that's often been underrated. The V8 cars lived in the shadows of the big brothers, the Miuras, the Countaches, and so on. But I think that's starting to change. People are starting to now understand and appreciate these small V8s, and they were, I guess, the Urraco, the Silhouette and the Halper were the three models, and then of course they went to the Gallardo sometime down the track in Audi's ownership, which was a 10-cylinder car. So for many, this is the ultimate Lamborghini. This particular car is a 1970 Lamborghini Miura S, and as I'm sure you'll agree, a stunning looking motor car. And Lamborghini has always been in my blood, and whilst I love the Countach, I guess the Miura is something special, and I was fortunate to find a factory right-hand drive example in America some years ago that needed restoration. The car, interestingly, is right-hand drive, had lived most of its life in the States. So we restored that car over many years, and I was fortunate to take it to the Lamborghini 50th anniversary event held in Italy in 2013, and then drive the car across Europe and the Alps and Switzerland, and had a wonderful experience taking that car back to London. That car ultimately ended up in Australia, and I sold it, perhaps regretfully, but I then bought this particular car instead, and fortunate still to have a Miura in the garage. I often get asked what's it like to drive a Miura, and I think it's just an incredible experience. I think it just, like no other car, brings all the senses together. I guess to look at is just a stunning car, but once you start the engine, the whole noise is just, you know, the earth shakes really. Sitting in the car, just the whole connection with the road is quite something, and it's, I wouldn't say it's like a racing car, but it certainly just gives you that incredible, almost a raw experience, which is just sort of seat of the pants, I suppose. And you know, every time you get into it and drive it and you get out, it just puts an incredible smile on your face. And it's just thinking about it, sort of the hairs stand up on the back of your neck. It really is a tremendous experience. Other really interesting and quite unique cars. The car behind me is a 1954 AC Ace, which is the predecessor to the legendary AC Cobra, Shelby Cobra. This particular car, factory right-hand drive, and had a lot of really interesting period race history, and has lived in Australia for most of its life. This car is a 1953 Mercedes-Benz 300S. These particular cars are extremely rare, with just over 500 examples built in the coupe, roadster and cabriolet versions. This car was in fact the predecessor to the iconic Gullwing, and back in the day cost more than what the Gullwing did new. This was certainly the flagship for Mercedes in the early 50s, and today remains just an iconic classic car. As you will see, the interior on this car is quite something, just very well appointed, as you'd expect, I guess, for a high-end Mercedes-Benz of the period. Just all the leather, of course all the timber on the dash. Just a lovely place to be.